The scandal broke the moment the trailer door swung open, not with shouting, but with silence so sharp it felt indictable. Cold morning light cut across the gravel yard of Tiny Hooves' farm as Margaret stood frozen, one hand over her lips, the other gripping the bill of lading like a piece of incriminating evidence. The driver, exhausted and impatient, lifted the latch with a clatter that echoed like a gavel strike. Inside the trailer, towering above the straw bedding, stood a massive Clydesdale gelding, copper and white, muscles shifting like quiet thunder. His breath fogged into the morning air. His eyes, impossibly soft, met hers with a calm that contradicted everything about his size. Margaret didn't speak, didn't blink. The scene felt like a bureaucratic misfire big enough to alter lives. Behind her, the 3 miniature rescue foals pressed against the stall bars, trembling at the sound of the opening door. Their thin bodies and wide eyes reflected months of neglect she'd spent every waking minute trying to undo. The driver shuffled through his clipboard. "Ma'am, this ain't the Palomino." The understatement struck the air like political testimony delivered too late. Inside Margaret's mind, panic clashed with responsibility. How do you tell 3 broken babies the protector they were promised isn't coming? How do you refuse the giant soul staring at you as though he already belongs here? A news alert pinged faintly from a phone in the driver's pocket. A transport union delay, statewide coverage, no available haulers for days. The kind of infrastructure failure people argue about on the evening broadcasts. Margaret exhaled shakily. The foals whimpered. The Clydesdale lowered his head, almost bowing. And in that charged, impossible stillness, she whispered the words that would upend everything. "Unload him." The driver hesitated. The foals stepped back in fear. And the giant horse took one slow, decisive step forward, toward them all. The first moments felt like a congressional chamber, holding its breath before a damning revelation. The Clydesdale, Murphy, as his halter tag revealed, descended the ramp with the patient gravity of something that understood its own power and refused to misuse it. His hooves struck the ground in slow, resonant thuds, each one sending a tremor through the foal's stall, as though announcing an uninvited authority figure at a fragile hearing. Margaret's pulse hammered. She watched the foals recoil, watched Murphy pause, and then, astonishingly, lower himself until his massive frame became small, still, and non-threatening. A motion so deliberate it felt rehearsed for an audience that had never trusted anyone. The foals froze, ears flicking. Margaret knelt beside them, whispering steady assurances, but it wasn't her voice that changed their stance. It was Murphy's silence, vast and patient, like an unspoken promise. Inside the farmhouse, the TV murmured background news. Agriculture shortages, transport failures, rural sanctuaries closing. The words drifted out the open window, commentary on a country where people and animals alike too often slipped through the cracks. Margaret glanced back at Murphy and saw something shift. One foal, Honey, the smallest, skittish even with her, took 2 trembling steps toward the giant. Her narrow chest heaved, her legs quivered. Murphy responded by lowering his head until his breath warmed the top of her mane. The tension broke like a closed door meeting suddenly turning honest. Honey leaned in. The other 2 followed, inching forward with a hesitant courage Margaret hadn't witnessed in weeks. Murphy didn't move, didn't claim. He simply received them. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. Unexpected, uncontrolled, like a truth exposing itself without permission. By noon, the foals were shadowing him. By dusk, they lay curled against his side as he rested in the straw, their tiny bodies pressed into the warmth of a creature 10 times their size. Margaret watched from the barn doorway, the setting sun flickering behind her like a warning light. Because tomorrow morning, the transport company would call back. And this time, they wouldn't be asking. The call came just after dawn, brisk, procedural, and oblivious to the fracture it threatened. Margaret kept the phone pinned between her shoulder and ear as she approached the barn. Inside, Murphy rose slowly, the foals scrambling to their feet beside him. Their eyes, once dull, now sparked with something like belief. A belief that could be broken with a single corrected delivery. "Yes," she said tightly. "I understand you found a driver." Her voice wavered, betraying the storm building in her chest. "No, you don't understand. It's not that simple anymore." Murphy stepped toward her, massive head brushing her arm with a gentleness that felt like a plea. Across the state, on a different ranch, the miniature palomino she'd been awaiting grazed beside a young girl in a pink coat. Photos had arrived overnight. The child's fingers tangled lovingly in the horse's mane, the kind of bond that forms instantly and refuses to be negotiated. Margaret watched her foals press into Murphy's legs, their bodies trembling as though they already sensed the danger of separation. Their breathing quickened. A soft whimper escaped one of them. Then another. The barn filled with a quiet, rising panic. Something inside her snapped into place. Margaret dialed the other ranch owner. Her voice steadied into a tone she hadn't used since the hardest fights of her life. The tone of a woman who would not lose something essential. She explained everything. The mix-up, the fear, the healing, the impossible miracle that had stepped off that trailer by mistake. When she finished, the line went silent. A child's voice faintly overlapped in the background. "Daddy, can Kenny stay? The little one, he likes me." Then the ranch owner exhaled, long, laden, decisive. "Ma'am, I think your big guy found where he belongs." Margaret closed her eyes. Relief hit her so hard her knees nearly buckled. Within days the story spread, first through small-town whispers, then local outlets, then national media chasing something pure in a world starved for it. Donations surged. Visitors arrived with soft voices and hopeful eyes. Reporters filmed the improbable herd. A towering draft horse curled protectively around 3 miniature foals who no longer trembled when strangers approached. Murphy became the quiet center of everything, the heart the farm didn't know it needed. Months later, Margaret stood at the pasture fence, watching the once traumatized foals gallop with confidence, Murphy thundering alongside them in slow, joyful arcs. She breathed in the scene, the laughter of volunteers, the warm hay, the healed bodies and unbroken spirits, and felt a truth settle in her like a verdict finally delivered. Sometimes the world sends the wrong thing. And sometimes the wrong thing is exactly the miracle you were waiting for. Murphy stopped, turned, and met her gaze, steady, eternal. And in that grounding silence, Margaret realized her life had changed the moment the wrong horse stepped off that truck.